Today we're going to put casters on this work table. It's a good, steady, sturdy work table, but in order for me to move it around the shop, I've got to lift it and move it. It's not very convenient, so today we're going to put casters on this table. Don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss any of our magical content. Now let's go make some magic. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Larry. Before we get started, remember, there's no greater tool in your workspace than your safety gear. Always wear ear and eye protection when working in your workspace, and sometimes more when you have to. Now, let's go build some magic. Okay, first we have to build a plate that goes on the bottom of this work table. These legs are not square. This is an old work table, so I have to make sure I measure both sides, both the length and the width. And then, of course, we translate those measurements over to the table saw. First, I'll cut the width. Then readjust, and there, I cut the length. And now we have a bottom plate made. Next up is we have to chop 4 inches off the bottom of these legs. The reason it's 4 inches is because the casters, from the place it hits the floor to the top of the plate, is exactly 4 inches. And I want to make sure that the top of my work surface remains flush with my other work tables. So we get the circular saw out, chop the legs off. Of course, we measured on each leg here, so it's just a matter of chopping the legs off. Always have to clean up with some sandpaper to make sure that end is nice and neat. And then set up for the next one. Now I don't show all of the legs getting cut, but I give you the gist of it right here, chopping off one leg at a time. And again, this one gets cleaned up using some sandpaper. So now that we have our plate cut, now we have to assemble it to the bottom of the table. I'm going to use these clamps to separate these legs. As I said, these legs are not square. So even though I separate them and make room for that plate to fit flush to the bottom, it still needs some coaxing with this hammer. Next, we have to start securing the legs to the plate. We do that simply by drilling some holes for some screws, countersinking the holes such that we can make room for the head of the screw. If you don't countersink, what happens is the wood likes to split, especially at the end of a board. The end of boards do not like to be pushed around, so it will split right through. And this wood is very dry. This table has been around for quite a while, so this wood is very dry. So always make sure you countersink, particularly when you're at the end of a board. Okay, now that we have the plate secured, it's time to put our casters on. So we simply line up the casters, the plate on the bottom. Of course, first we have to mark off the location where we can drill our screw holes. And then we just drill the screw holes. We have to do this for each caster. So we zip those through pretty quick. And now we align the screw in the hole, you'll notice that there are washers on the bottom beneath the head of the screw and the plate. And that's to ensure we get a lot of purchase between that screw and the caster plate. It makes it more sturdy. So we do this for all the casters. You'll notice on this caster I'm assembling it a little bit differently in a slightly different location. That's okay. As long as these are on the bottom and they're good and secure and they're towards the bottom of those legs, everything's gonna work out just fine. Next, we have to make sure that the casters are all assembled properly, that the brakes work, that the whole table rolls well. But most importantly, we gotta make sure that it's flush with the rest of the work surfaces, working out just fine there. And now we roll it along. The wheels seem to work well. The brakes seem to be braking well. Simply unbrake them by kicking them up. And test fit went well. Now we're on to paint. In order to paint this bottom plate, I've got to place the table on top of this work table. So I don't want it to roll off. That's why I add these bumpers on the side. I go the extra measure and make sure that the table won't move once it's up there, so I use some clamps to hold it down. Next, I have to mask off portions of the bottom plate because there's no way I'll be able to paint the entire thing in that tight spot. Probably should have done that before I attached the plate, but we are where we are. So measure the length of tape, making sure on the inside I align it with the inside of the legs there. No reason why, just choice I made. Make sure it lays down with some good adhesion by rubbing it into the piece of wood there, that plate. And now we're ready to trim off the corners. I couldn't get a knife in there, so I used this trick. I just used a piece of wood and then tore that off. Gave me a clean enough edge for this work table. Alright, next up is the primer. Now this primer is very old, but that's alright. Now, most people may not use primer on a work table, but I like to use primer no matter when I'm painting. It just gives better adhesion between the final coat of paint and your wood. So I just use a chip brush here. These are called chip brushes. It's a down and dirty kind of brush. It's not meant for fine work. If I get 10-15 uses out of this brush, I'm doing well. So make sure that I coat the entire surface there, making sure to get the edge of that plate there. That's a laminated board, so sometimes those laminations can be difficult to paint. And then I use this artist brush to get in the places where the chip brush can't get. I also use that chip brush on the ends here. Again, making sure to get the edge of the plate, that laminated board. That plywood can be difficult to make sure that you get all the holes in there. And then I use the artist brush to make sure I get in the areas where the chip brush can't get. Now eventually I paint the bottom of the legs here. You can see I start doing it there. And then we wait for the paint to dry. Flash forward a bit here. And now we have this brown paint. I think the color of this is called rope. R-O-P-E. And so we stir that well, making sure to clean off the stirring stick. And again, we go back to a clean chip brush. And we make sure that we coat the entire thing. Again, the same application here, making sure that we get the edge of the plywood. You can see how some of the paint, some of the primer soaked in. So we gotta make sure that we give that a good thorough coating. We will not be doing 2 coats on this. And again, I use the artist brush. You'll notice the bottom of the leg got painted with some primer. So we go and hit that with this finish coat of paint, this rope. And we get that all the way around. Using my left hand, ta-da, to paint. Weird. And making sure that we get every surface on that leg, front to back, filling in the ends of the holes just to make it look, filling in the ends of the screws just to make it look nice. And then we come over to this side here. I decided to use this painter's brush to get the edge there, and that wasn't working out so well, so I broke out the chip brush, making sure that we cover that well. Again, it's not going to get a second coat, so I want to make sure that we get as much of that as we can with this first coat. Now I also had to make sure I got the bottom of the legs here. You can see I ended up painting all of those legs there, so I made sure I got all that. And when it dries, you won't tell the difference. Also hides up some of the scars left from the using the circular saw to cut the legs off. Looks like it's always been there. So there we go. Now I'll wait for that to dry and flash forward a little bit. Now, because I'm not wild at my painting skills, I had to go back and touch up some of the yellow that we use on the work tables. And you'll notice this paint is not in good shape, so it takes a long time to stir. It took a lot longer than this video is showing, but it took a long time to stir, so I made sure that got really stirred up. And you can see in the corner there where some of the brown got on there, so I gotta go back and clean that up, making sure to get as close to the leg as we can. Again, it's a work table, so I'm not so nervous about this being so gorgeous. And while we're at it, because this thing has been in service for a while, it got dinged up, so why not take the time to apply some patch to some of the paintwork that got banged up, just to make that table look nice. We also catch some paint on the end here. See, there's a primer that I accidentally hit there, so we clean that up. And with that, we wait for it to dry, and that table is done. So I remove the bumpers, take the table down and test it out, see what it looks like, see how it works. And just like that, I've got a table with casters. Couldn't make me happier. That's it for today, folks. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Larry. Why not share this channel with your friends? Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and turn on your bell for notifications so you never miss any of our magical content. Until next time, remember, the world is full of friends you haven't yet met. And remember to surround yourself with good people. And always a couple jerks. Now go build your own magic.